Hello and welcome this evening. Welcome to Marion Dampier-Jeans international broadcast. Tonight we have a special guest, and I would like to introduce Reverend Andreas Hindström a little bit later. But first of all, I will give my word the word to Bo next to me. Hello, Bo. How are you this evening?
Oh, Anita, very good, thank you.
And how is the weather up in north of Denmark?
It's actually raining already.
Really?
Yeah, it is. And
Here in south of Denmark, it's snowing, but it's not the weather we are going to talk about.
No.
I hope you're well too, Bo, and thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you.
You too.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners to Marion Dampier-Jeans international podcast show, or whatever, let's talk about spirits tonight. I will gladly introduce you to Marion Dampier-Jeans. Hello, Marion, how are you?
Thank you very much. From London. Yes, I'm sitting over here. Thank you.
I'm glad that you will be here too.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Reverend Andreas Hindström from Sweden in Göteborg, Gothenburg. Welcome to you too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How are you tonight?
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming with us tonight. And we hope we will have a very interesting evening tonight. So let's start. Marion, I will give you a word and you can enjoy from now on.
Thank you, Anita, for that introduction. Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to the site in which we have great success in throughout the world because it is in English. But when I normally speak with Andreas, it is always in English because I can't understand his Swedish, so it's fine. So it has always been, I was saying English. But what we will do today, it is to talk about somehow the Swedish way of the mediumship, also talk about spiritualism in Sweden, in which I know that Andreas knows a lot about. And I think that what I will do without saying too much, that is ask Andreas to please come forth and speak to us, please.
Thank you, Marion. It's so good to see you again. I hope we can get together in the physical soon.
Yes, darling.
Yes. Well, I'm very pleased to partake in this tonight. And I was thinking about maybe telling people a bit about the history of Swedish spiritualism. I think most people who are into mediumship and especially spiritualism thinks or believes that the modern spiritualism started in 1848 because of certain happenings in America. But actually in Sweden, mediumship first documented is back in the 1770s. Did you know that?
I knew that we went before the other ones. I know Denmark also did.
Yes. Actually, our King Charles XIII was, well, he was a Freemason, but he was very interested and actually held seances.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and it's documented.
Yeah, lovely.
But we don't have that much facts about the history of spiritualism in Sweden. We don't, but I think I have what is, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what I do want to say about Swedish spiritualism is that the first book ever about spirit communication was published in the early 1850s something, about of a guy called himself an ex-doubter, ex-tvivlare, because of his experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we had our first spiritualist, like a fraternity.
Yeah.
Yeah, förening in Swedish.
Yeah, that's it.
They started in 1870s.
Right. Mm-hmm.
and spread to some extent. We had a few, and we published some magazines, weekly or monthly, I don't remember. And initially, we actually mostly invited English, British mediums in the 1800s.
Right, yeah.
And it wasn't until the early 1900s that we started to produce our own mediums that we know of today anyway. And one guy who comes to mind is a man called Sirdellini. If you can show him on the screen, please. It's the first one. The first picture. Yeah, that's the guy on the left with a mustache. Not that one. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a medium for almost 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
A trance medium, and he was a trance medium in that respect that he both communicated loved ones and philosophy.
Fantastic.
Yes, he actually wrote a book which I forgot to bring tonight, but anyway, he made a book, and actually he influenced some of Sweden's greatest writers. He inspired them in their work. Guys like Viktor Rydberg, have you ever heard about him?
No.
Now well, he's not so famous any longer because people don't read any longer here in Sweden. But he's one of the greatest writers in Sweden. So he was very inspired by the spirit communication by this Carl Söderling.
Okay.
Yes, and the next guy on the screen is a guy called Ernst Broberg, which I'm sure you heard of, Marion.
Yes,
yeah, he was he was a physical medium. He was a trance medium also, but he was a very good materialization medium and a direct voice medium.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he has quite an interesting story because in his youth he was an ardent member of the Salvation Army,
Right.
Frälsningsarmén.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was also a theosophist until he came into contact with spiritualism in the 1920s, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And he, at first he attended the fraternities weekly seances, and he started to sit every week there, but quite soon they realized that he was a medium with great potential, so he started to sit at home, and he had a home circle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I think it took about 9 years before they had their first materialization.
Fantastic.
So 9 years, once every week. What does that make? About 450 sittings until the materializations came.
Yeah.
And what's interesting with this guy is that he is written about by another Swedish author named Jan Fridegård, who is the guy on the second print.
Okay.
Oh,
Are you with us, Annette?
yes, just a second.
She's at the bottle.
No, I'm not, Marion.
You know what he's saying, spirit to spirit, yes?
I wanted to show you this person. This is Jan Fridegård. He's not a medium, but he has done so much for spiritualism and understanding of the reality of the spirit world in Sweden. Jan Fridegård is one of Sweden's greatest novelists ever. He wrote a lot about slaves during the Viking era.
Okay.
He wrote about poor people in poor situations. In Sweden we call them working class writers.
Yeah.
Anyway, he actually came to a seance with Ernst Brogren. and he was quite skeptic to this, but anyway, he got an invite, so he attended. And at that seance, his family in the spirit world, mom, dad, and I think sister, came through direct voice, which made him, you know, he just knew that this was true. It's a reality that we survive death. So he started to write about it, and he wrote a really, really beautiful book called Gåtfulla vägen. I don't know how you translate that.
No.
Doesn't matter, because you just have it in Swedish anyway. And in that book, he describes a lot of his experiences, both with our Swedish medium Ernst Brogren, but also with your, I was about to say your medium, Marion, Einer Nielsen.
Oh, Einer Nielsen, yes, that's right.
It's very well described in Fridegård's book, both materializations by Einar.
Yeah.
Einar.
Yeah, Einer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyway, he got really, really convinced about the reality of survival after death. So he started to write. He wrote about it in the book I mentioned. He also wrote another book describing, you know, making people understand that we are more than a physical body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that book got quite popular and famous in Sweden. And but all his colleagues, they really disrespected him because of his views on spiritualism. And but he didn't mind, because he knew this is true. So he's kind of a hero within the spiritualistic movement in Sweden, the way I see it anyway, because he stood up for what is truth.
Fantastic.
Despite what other people said, so to speak. And also what's interesting is that Conan Doyle was over in Sweden. Did you know that?
Yes, I did, because he came also over to Denmark.
Ah, okay.
Mm.
Because Conan Doyle was invited by Rolf Karlsson,
Yeah.
which I don't have any picture of, sorry. But Rolf Karlsson was the initiator. If people don't, here in the Nordic countries, don't know the name Rolf Karlsson, please Google it, because he did a lot for spiritualism in the Nordic countries. He revived the ISF, International Spiritualist Federation, after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And he invited over Einar.
Yeah.
And he also started the National Spiritualist, not the National, the Nordic Spiritualist Union. Yeah. Which had its first congress in Denmark in 1950, I believe. Yeah. And he has also written a really nice book, just in Swedish, but anyway, which I have on PDF, because I scan all these old books because they're very hard to get.
Yes.
And I think they should be preserved, because they're wonderful to read, really. Yeah. And it also gives us an understanding about our history.
Yeah. And I think that saying that, Andreas, it has been very important for me to open the doors to the world about the Nordic countries and our work within spiritualism, communication, physical mediumship, healing, and so forth, because that when you start talking to the world out there, you don't actually know anything about the Nordic countries, which is Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Greenland. Very often you get all our sort of countries mixed up. You don't understand that we have got different languages and so forth. And when you try to sort of explain to them, we have actually got quite old and very good mediums. They are totally shocked and sort of saying, well, we never heard of them. And we just put them up, and I would sort of say, well, let me just give you one example. I said, and this is a mistake I hear again and again and again. We had in Denmark a photographer. He didn't say he was a spiritualist. He was a photographer, but he got involved in spirit communication, and he got involved of taking photographs of levitation, mediums flying over the table, cutlery in the middle of the tables flying around. He had his own laboratorium in Copenhagen, where he took something like 3,000, I think it was, photograph of levitation in all different kind of manners. I have got a very well written document upon one of our own mediums, Anne Rasmussen, who actually was the leading medium within his work. Or these phenomena could not have taken place at all, I have to say. But what is very interesting, saying that, there you have got Anne Rasmussen, you've got Sven Türk, and then you have got Einer Nielsen. But talking about Sven Türk and those photographs, if you like, it's very interesting. Even the other day, I saw again one of his photographs being used, but nobody knows anything about Sven Türk. Exactly. That he was Danish, where he came from, why did he do it, what happened. And then I said, and I have to say, I hold my head every time I saw this latest thing says everybody's talking about on Netflix, what he was talking about physical mediumship and whatever. There was a picture again, and there it was, table in the air, sitting up there, medium standing underneath it, nothing. And that irritates me. That is why I'm happy to make these broadcasting here, to actually tell people in the world, we had some of the most fantastic, both mental and physical mediums in the world, who did sit for test around the world, I have to say. He went to Germany and sat for test. He went over to France to sit for test. He went over to England to sit for test. And they were thoroughly investigated. And they were not taken from fraud at all. They was actually very, very good mediums. And that including people in what do you call it, Norway and Iceland. We have also got Icelandic mediums. We had also got Danish and Swedish medium. So it is important that what you're just saying, how far back that in Sweden you can go with this kind of spiritualism, the books, who they were, and you know, how people wrote about it. Now, I'm not quite sure, because it's going to lead us into something else, if there were any spiritualist churches within Sweden.
Not until I started one in 2005.
That's it.
We've never had one in Sweden.
Yeah, I remember that because I worked there, so I do know you did have a church.
Have you?
I found that very interesting. Where in Denmark we had up to 33 spiritualist churches over the time. We had many. They also called them, excuse me, temples and things like that, which was great. But there has been a great, research. You have Lund University that has studied the paranormal, haven't you? Where there was a lot of cases being studied.
Yes. In the south of Sweden, in Lund, I believe.
In Lund, yeah. So there has been a lot of, if you like, sort of doors opening. Do you understand it? And medium has to go there for test or whatever they sat with. Where was the other medium that was up in middle of Sweden, where once upon a time, with Jane? Who was that who had that one? She had a center.
Jane Lusell.
Yeah.
What about her?
Does that still exist, that center?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm just asking, because there's just been small centers a few places, hasn't
there?
Yeah,
but you see, even though we didn't have any churches, you know, in the 60s and in the 70s and prior to that, in the föreningar, in the fraternities, it was a bit churchy.
Yeah, but it was that in Denmark too, and in England and in America. He started by hiding himself, if you like, if that's a word for it, behind Christianity.
Yes.
Where you saw the picture of, I can't remember who it was, the gentleman who had a big crucifix on him. You see, they did actually, the guy in the middle, they did actually have and hide themselves behind Christianity. If you, for instance, go up to Denmark and you go to our only spiritualist church in Aarhus, what you will see there is a picture of Jesus Christ standing, you know, where the rostrum is. Again, it proves they have to go behind. Do you see what I mean? Christianity. And they have pictures of Jesus and all sorts of things all over the place. We also had that, of course, in Great Britain. We also had that. And that's why in England, as you should know, spiritualism is divided into two sectors: the greater world, which are the Christian part, and the SNU, which are the union part. Completely two things. One worship Jesus Christ as the leading guide, I think, and the other one saying, forget it. You know, they don't have a picture of crucifixes or whatever in our churches. So yeah, that has always been, always been. But what I would like now to ask you for, because that we go back, how many years do we go back now? 5? It must be about what?
It's 15 years.
It's about 15 years, isn't it?
Yeah.
We go back to when we first met each other. And I think that at the time, could that have been in Göteborg when we first to meet?
Yes.
Was it
Yes.
you set up in Göteborg a fantastic, I have to say, meeting for physical mediumship, where you invited various different physical mediums from England into Göteborg, or just outside, where we actually, for the first time, many people started to witness, again, physical phenomena.
Yes. Yes. And actually, it was not just mediums from England. It was also from Germany, if you remember.
Absolutely. That was Kai.
Yeah. And we had really good, it was nice, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just one of those things that when you talk about Scandinavia again, or you talk about the Nordic countries again, people today are still reminding me of it, because many of their journeys started there. A lot of people today who goes around and saying, oh, they're becoming expert, they knew nothing until I brought them into you in Sweden, and they started to see physical phenomena there. And I never forget, and this is quite funny, because I never forget it, we were sitting and we saw Bill Meadow. It was one of the mediums, was Bill Meadow, and we were sitting there on our benches or wherever we were sitting around him, and he was in the cabinet. And I remember sitting there, and I had Monica Houghton from Norway on one side. I had somebody else from Denmark on my other side, and he was sort of, when the light went out, he was sort of very shaky. So they all started to touch my shoulders, my hair, making sure I was there and holding hands. And then I remember with Bill Meadow, and this is actually fantastic, a physical medium, still know him today and still have sat with him not long ago. And I always remember that Bill suddenly said, he has a guide that comes through, and he suddenly said, would you like to see my head? And we all said, yes. Well, I said yes, and I think you said yes, because we knew what was going to happen. But all the other one went, oh, what? And the most wonderful part were suddenly from out of the cabinet came this illuminated green head, straight up, and just hang in the middle of, I would say, air. It just sat there.
Yeah.
And I remember these arms around me. I mean, my boobs, ow! I was going, ow! They were going to really pinching me. And I go, stop it! And I just remember sitting there and looking at this physical materialization of this bolded man sitting there, just turning around, looking around, and, oh, hello, this kind of thing, hello. And then when he suddenly said, and how many of you would like to touch me?
Yes.
And there was not a lot of people who said anything, but, of course, me and you went, yes, please. And of course, we stood up and like that. And he said, that's fine. You can touch me head. And then I remember we going down, and I started to touch his head. He said, well, put your fingers onto it. And I went, and I actually banged him on the head. And this spirit, he says, well, that was better. And then he invited all the other people down to touch him. And I have never seen so many people who call themselves spiritual frightened in their life. I remember coming out of the sounds. I remember they just come out and went, what happened? What was that? And I laughed. And I just thought, well, I said, you have now seen spiritualism or spirit communication at its best, I said. And then the sounds have started. And I remember we had Bill Meadow there, and then we had loads of wind that got blown around. And then we had Kite Muggy. He was also there showing us various different things. We had loads of things happening and lectures. I remember I gave a lecture on the physical part of mediumship and how it hangs together. And that's where we two met and became the best of friends.
Yes.
And when we two started to work together, crossover with Sweden and Denmark. And I then came, and then I worked in your church when you had it, and then you became the Reverend. I did have to say, it doesn't mean I have to bend down and bow and saying hello like this, and you just start laughing. And I remember, I always remember that here we were, you know, but I always appreciated in the sense of it that you took the initial step to actually go in, to understand, to find, to search, or whatever it is you wanted to do. I always find that was really great with you. But the way that I understand, and hold me right if I can't remember all of it, Andreas, but you didn't actually go to England to get your ministry.
No, I did not. I'm not so sorry to say, but I've been to England and to the famous college a few times, but the world of spiritualism is so much greater than just England.
Yeah. So where did you go?
Actually, I went to Germany.
And that was your start, was it?
Not really. My start was